If you want to participate, contact me at ordinarywomenpodcast@gmail.com. I'm sure you have great projects to brag about. You can also follow me and message me on Instagram at ordinarywomenpodcast, on Twitter at ordinarywomenpc, or on Facebook on the page Ordinary Women. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Ordinary Women. I'm welcoming Radhika today. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Lucy. Hello. It's so good to be connecting again. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well too, thank you. Really excited to have you here today, and yet super excited to speak with you again. Can you start by giving us a quick introduction of yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thank you. Firstly, so excited to be here with you and to have connected with you through this engagement. My name is Radhika. I also go by Rads, which was actually a nickname given to me during my time in Australia. At the moment, I'm a sales coach and I live in Singapore, and I moved here from Sydney. And I think arguably it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And before I lived in Sydney, I lived in India, where I was born and raised. So that's me. And I'm very excited to be chatting with you today, Lucy. And I also think the name of this podcast, Ordinary Woman, is actually perfect for my podcast debut. So thank you.
Amazing. I'm glad that you're as excited as I am. And that's so cool. I've never been to Sydney, but I really want to go. I mean, I've never been to like so many places where I really want to go, but yeah.
I'll take you. It's gorgeous. You have to.
Oh, nice. Looking forward to that. And can you tell us something unusual about you?
Unusual. I'm going to give you two things. The first one is a bit silly, but it always amuses people. So it's my fun fact that I am a vegetarian and I was raised a vegetarian, which means I have never had meat, I've never had seafood, I've never even had eggs. Like, I literally don't know what an omelette tastes like. And to me, that's super normal. It's very normal in the culture that I come from. But as I have traveled, as I've lived in different places and shared this fun fact with other people, they just find it very amusing. So I think that's one of the unusual things about me.
Yes, so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. But yes, I do have another thing that I also, again, think is not that unusual for me, knowing my life, but other people I share this with find it very unusual, is that I was the first woman in my family, the first girl in my entire family ever, to finish college and to get a job. Get a paying job. And it was definitely a bit of a scandal when I first started out my career. I think it still is 10 years later, but it's such an important part of my story, my brand. So yeah, I always like mentioning that because to some other folks, it sounds very unusual and even amusing at times.
That's super cool. Congratulations. Can you please tell us more about why that was a scandal? What happened?
Well, that's what the entire podcast today is about. But yes, I was raised in a very conservative family, and their values are very much guided and judged by gender norms. And every person, specifically every gender, has a role to play. And the gender that I was assigned and what I identify with, which is a woman, you're not supposed to, or rather, the norm is for you to be in the more nurturing sort of space and stay at home and look after your family and, produce children and do all these wonderful things that our bodies are more than capable of doing. But then that's where it stops. The career, the money, the caregiving comes from the males. So, of course, through generational changes, that had to change at some point. But I think what happened was it was my generation, and it happened to be me as the first girl in my generation to have done that. And that's why it was such a scandal, because I think people were just shocked as to how this was even a possibility and were afraid that this would kick off a series of events that nobody was yet open to or accepting of. So I think there's still a lot of tension and a lot of unacceptance of the fact that I can look after myself and others around me.
That is so interesting, and I have so many questions, but before we jump fully on that, and I think it's going to be especially super interesting with what you have just said, and we'll say more. I like to start this podcast always by asking, was there an event or a moment in your life when you realized that you are a woman?
Oh, I'm a 30-year-old woman, Lucy, and I've never thought about this question. I think it's so profound. So when you asked me this, I was stumped, I'm not gonna lie.
Mm.
And I'm gonna have to be honest. I don't think there is a specific milestone or an event, but as women, it really is a series of events. It's almost a reminder where you go about your life, your daily life, just thinking, yeah, I'm just another person, unless or until it's thrown in your face that you're a woman. So I think there is a lot of associations to the reminder and to the realization of being a woman. Some are good, some are bad, some are ugly, good memories, bad memories. I think the good memories would definitely be the way I was cared by my family and the people around me. I was one of the few sort of girls when I was growing up, and I had other older male cousins and brothers. So I definitely received a lot of love and care and, pretty clothes and just that early onset of femininity that comes into your life as a girl or a woman, which I definitely enjoyed. So those would be the good memories. And I think there are some bad ones that you try not to think about, but then every single time you are told that you need to be acting or behaving a certain way because of your gender. And I just remember being really confused. And I was like, why am I being asked to act differently just because of who I am? I think some other would also include, as a woman, when you first are touched inappropriately by a stranger, by a family member, and you're just really confused again, and you don't understand why you're going through that experience. But I think if I think of sort of the earliest memory of realizing that the path I'm on may look a bit different than the boys or the men that I was surrounded by was, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it was really my first period. And I'm not
Mm.
saying that because of the biological reasons behind it, but it's the first memory and the earliest memory that I have of shame.
Oh, really?
Shame isn't that crazy? And I think a lot of women
Yeah.
out there would relate.
Mm.
It's it's mad to think that you are made to feel shame about something that is so natural. It's as natural
Yeah.
as breathing. But
Completely.
that was my first memory of shame, and that was, the way I was taught about it, the way I was asked to act when that happened. I obviously had my mom had the whole talk with me, and then I remember going to school the next day and try to like talk to my girlfriends about it, talk to my teachers about it, and everyone was just so hush hush. And I think even today, we're in 2023 and we're so open about talking about so many topics publicly, but this for some reason is still taboo. So I find it fascinating that emotion like shame gets associated with you being a woman and something that happens to you so naturally. Like if you look at consciousness as a spectrum of different vibrations, there is the higher the vibration, the more positive that emotion is. So for example, the higher vibrations of consciousness are love, peace, joy, enlightenment. But the lowest vibration is shame. It's lower than guilt. And to be made to feel that only because of your gender and your anatomy, I think it's beyond fascinating.
That is so true. And still, like, so many discriminations. I mean, I grew up in France where it's like, I mean, it's getting better. There's still a big taboo, but I remember well, I think it was in India. I remember reading about, but I'm not too sure, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that there's still some mainly villages where women have to leave and like go in more remote houses the
Mm,
time they have their periods. Like
mm.
the actual discrimination around it is also wild.
It really is. And I'm sure other cultures and different cultures have different associations with this, but it's still very restrictive, very taboo, and
Mm.
it's just something that came to mind to me. And I know it sounds like more the biological reason, but I think it's more the emotional reason why for me it's always stuck out. I still have a very vivid memory of that instance. I remember the exact clothes I was wearing. Like that's how huge the impact
Wow.
was on my emotional well-being and sense of being.
Mm.
Something that's so natural.
Yeah. Completely. Because you mentioned like that it's biological, but still, yeah. But I think it's really also saying because like even though gender norms are moving and we're making progress of that, there's still a lot. The big majority of people who have their periods are women. So I guess that's also why it's mainly associated with that, independently of gender. And like, yeah, it's just one more thing where about which women are discriminated on, which is so annoying. And yeah. Oh my God, but you know what? I mean, deviating a tiny bit, but also I think it's really interesting, and especially for everyone who has their period. I'm discovering how much period has an influence on your body, how ignorant I am about it, which is also, again, very abnormal, but also not surprising.
Oh my God, yes.
But it's so fascinating how much your body changes through the different parts of your cycle and like what you should or like what would be better for your body in terms of rest, eating, exercising, etc. It's so interesting. Yeah, highly recommend to look into this.
100%. And I just like everybody else, I have a WhatsApp chat group with some girlfriends, and we often talk about different topics. And my friend said this the other day, which is so true, is that women's health is a joke. It's not analyzed enough, it's not researched enough, there's not enough education about it, there's not enough treatments for it. And I read this book. I'm still reading it because it's actually quite an intense read. It's called Period Power by Macy Hill.
Oh my God, I'm reading it too.
Yes. Oh my God. It actually answers all the questions that you've just mentioned. Is that how do we start understanding our bodies a bit more? Because guess what, Lucy, you and I and a lot of us are in the same boat. We were never taught enough about our own bodies.
Completely. Oh my God, I love this book. I'm so excited that you're reading it as well. Now I have someone to talk about it with.
And Macy Hill, she's amazing. She's an expert on this topic, and she's also a coach, and I follow her podcast, and she's just got such pearls of wisdom.
Oh, I've just started it, but I'm really excited to continue it. And also, I think it's a like less funny book as well, very heavy, but more on disease. I'm also reading The Lady's Handbook to Her Mysterious Illness by Sarah Ramsey, I want to say. And basically, she battled with her health for more than a decade. And basically, because, I mean, as you just said, because women's body are not researched, there's so many illnesses that are not researched, cured, can't be easily found. And also she's explaining a lot how doctors dismiss her symptoms and what she says, because you can't prove pain. You can say and you can quantify-ish it. But yeah, and she talks about horrible things that happened to her just because doctors are like, whatever, like you're just being dramatic, you're just being overly sensitive, blah, blah, blah. And then when she eventually gets some diagnosis, all the doctors are like, whoa, no, it actually is that. But yeah.
And it's so much more common than we think it is.
Completely. She actually, I can't remember the figures now, but she talks about how many women are affected by autoimmune disease. And it is so interesting, revolting, outrageous at the same time that so many, I'll have to double check, but yeah.
No, absolutely. Super interested. It's crazy how we can do these quite difficult mathematical algorithms, but something as basic as knowing and understanding your own body, like our education system fails us in so many ways as well, as women and as men, or any gender, really.
Completely. Like thinking of the fact that ChatGPT exists and it can do so much, yet still endometriosis, for instance, touches about 1 out of 10 women, and it's still so hard to get a diagnosis. How? It's outrageous.
It's about priorities. And you made me laugh there, because this is sort of a reminder of the generational shift, where I remember when I was growing up, the benchmark was always man's gotten to moon and we still can't do this. And I love that your reference now was, oh, we've got ChatGPT. So we've really
That is
progressed
so
from
true.
man going to moon to let's come back to Earth and produce something like ChatGPT. But yes, I agree with the essence of what you're saying is that, yes, technology has furthered so much and it benefits us. And yes, it's better than it used to be. And speaking of ChatGPT and AI, there is AI that detects early onset of breast cancer now, for instance, which was really difficult to be
That's
detected
so cool.
before this technology came into being. So yes, I don't think either of us are shading tech or medicine or people in those professions, but I think it's just that there is still a massive gap that needs to be worked on because guess what? We are almost half of the population. So please, give us some attention and love.
Completely. So much
So
to
many.
say. So outrageous.
Yes, that's it. That's the word.
Yeah. Let's talk about something a bit more fun, probably. Did you grow up with any feminine female role model?
Ooh. I just want to share a very quick anecdote here. This was a while ago, but it's so interesting that this happened where I was doing an exercise where I was asked to write down the names of 50 people who had influenced my development throughout my life. And it's a harder exercise than you think it is. But anyway, it took me a few days. I finally got it done and I was super happy and relieved. And I was like, okay, I've got my 50 names. And this can be anybody from people you know in your life, your family, your friends, anyone you've come across at work, celebrities, dead, alive, any 50 names. So I went back to my list of 50 and I reviewed the entire list. And lo and behold, most of them were women.
Oh, cool.
I know. And I don't think it came as a surprise to me. I think it was just a validation in my belief of how influential women have been in my development throughout my life. So yes, there have not just been one, but many, many role models. And this is me on my sort of hype girl mode. But I truly mean this when I say every woman who's walked into my life has taught me something and taught me something valuable. So I think it's about the entire community, but I think I can't not give you the classic but genuine response of my mom.
Yeah.
Of course, she is a hero in a lot of ways, but there is also a different reason why I think she's a role model, which I'll get to in a second. But if I just look at her life, she was never provided with the typical means to education. She practically taught herself how to read and write when she moved to a new city with my dad. And in India, like moving to a new city or a new state can mean a completely new culture. Like you might as well not understand what's going on around you. So I think she's so brave, so smart. And we have this like inside family joke that she was never given the opportunity to fully uncover her potentials because it would have been too much for the people around her. So of course, I think, she is incredible. And at the same time, she's also my role model, but in a very different sense to the traditional definition of a role model, almost an inspiration. And this is going to sound awful, but I think I have faith that what I'm about to say won't be held against me. Like, I love my mom, and I know she loves her life. She's happy, she's fulfilled, she's really embraced motherhood and, her life and the roles in her life. But growing up, I just knew as much as I love her, I don't want this life for myself.
I mean, I think that's really acceptable. You're not your parents, right? You have your own life and your own interest and the right to be yourself.
Yeah. And I think what was really instrumental in that was also watching everything that she had been through and she had suffered and knowing that she would have been able to get out of all of these situations because, as I said, she's smart, she's brave, but she was actively not given the resources to be independent. So I think the definition of role model, I've definitely twisted it a little bit, but every time in my life I get stuck and I think that whether I should do this and what that means for me, I think I really go back to like, do I really want that life for myself? No. So I have to do this and I should do this and I want to do this so that I can sort of break that cycle. And I think I've been so lucky because, of course, along with her, I've had incredible other women my headmistress in school. She is somebody who will always be my everything, because she literally picked me out of a lineup. And when I didn't think that I had any talents, nobody around me knew or thought or believed in my talents, she did. And she put me into all of these roles and platforms and situations where, I was just forced to do my best and came out my best. My teachers, all my girlfriends over the years, every single woman that I've worked with, most of the managers that I've had in my 10 plus years of career have been female. So I think I've been so lucky to sort of have that continuous source of inspiration and role models, including you, Lucy.
Oh my God, that is so nice. And like, not deserved. That's so nice to say thank you.
Of course, I mean it.
Oh, I was going to ask if you have current role models, but I guess that would be blend with them, right?
Yes, and I think for me, the role model has always been this imaginary person who's sort of an amalgamation of all the things, qualities, skills, passion, confidence that I see in different people, different women, all sort of that comes together. And that's sort of my North Star. And that's why my role model is this imaginary person who has all of these qualities that I aspire to be one day.
Oh, I love that. And like, I'm sure that by aspiring to be like this, you already are. That's super cool. I love this answer. Thank you so much for sharing.
I know I'm not giving you the sort of straightforward ones, but just trying to be authentic here.
Yeah, no, I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's, yeah, definitely so interesting. And I really share that vision of getting, I mean, I don't have that imaginary person, but really, you're kind of the sum of people you've met, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you take a little bit of everyone and like what you want. And that's also how you learn who you want to be, who you don't want to be. Yeah.
100%.
Really interesting. And do you think that the lack of representation of women in society had an impact on you?
100%. Story time again, but
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. When I was growing up, especially in my early teens, if you were to ask me, hey, Radhika, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? I think I had these three options in responses. The first was a receptionist. Second was an air hostess or a stewardess. And then towards my late teens was a news anchor on TV. And I think I was obsessed with the idea of being a news anchor on TV. And do you want to take a guess as to why these were my three options?
Because it's what you knew, I'm going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in this very, very small town. It was less than 100,000 people. And I know it sounds like a lot, but by India standards, that's a very small town. And I love giving this example that the town that I grew up in was so small that the first McDonald's opened up when I was 17. And even then, you had to drive an hour outside of the city to get to your closest McDonald's. So, think that small. And of course, I've spoken about my mom. I've spoken about the amazing teachers who were my inspiration. And then outside of this, if I think of more sort of the financial independence angle, which has been the key focus of most of my life, I saw women being able to get there kind of through these roles. I saw them as receptionists or at the front desk. I saw them as air hostesses. And then obviously the more traditionally speaking, powerful ones, more in your face ones were news anchors on television. And, it's pretty big in India. And you have a lot of female anchors and they were really inspiring. And I love their suits, the makeup, the hair. And I genuinely was obsessed with the idea of being one of them. I enrolled myself into media studies. I majored in journalism because I thought this is what I want to be. But here's what I want to say. We're talking about representation, and this is an important conversation because all of these professions that I've just mentioned are super important. I personally don't have a lot of the skill sets and the expertise that you need to do these roles successfully. They're important in society. They're super important in the economy. But the point here is none of these would have been a good fit for me as an individual. But the fact that I thought that these were my options and I actively pursued these options just shows how much representation matters and how it can really guide your life. I think I got really lucky with the sort of series of events I fell into later in my life, and I've discovered and I've been exposed to so much more since. And I think I'm finally in the place where I think I'm pursuing my true passion or calling or talent or ikigai, whatever you want to call it. But it's only possible now because the bubble of my representation has expanded since I was a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I made a podcast out of this. But yeah, no, completely. And like, as you said, it's so important to remind people that, yeah, it's not that these professions are not important or anything. They, of course, they are, but it's also, yeah, as an individual, you're also it's okay not to be willing to do this. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'd like to jump on kind of the second part of this podcast and talk about a project, life achievement. I mean, we've briefly mentioned it earlier, but tell us more. What do you want to talk to us about today?
Thank you, Lucy. It's obviously a hard thing to do, right? Talking about yourself or your achievements. And I mean, it's ironic because obviously I'm here today and that's what we're here to do. But I've really had to channel all of my I am remarkable energy to be here and talk about it. But I think I want to split it up into two parts. One is sort of the life experience itself, and the second is how I'm wanting to bring that to life to enable others. So I'm not sure if it fits into the category of an achievement, but I want to say the life experience that I'm most sort of proud of and hold really high and would not trade that for anything else is pursuing my Ikigai, staying true to myself, and having to do that while quite systematically dismantling gender norms that I grew up in. And this affects you in so many ways because I think it's very easy to talk about following your passion, pursuing your why. And yes, it's something that I want to talk about to my coaching clients, but we also have to recognize that it is a privilege. Not everybody gets to do this. Not everybody gets to pursue their passions. Sometimes people spend their entire lives not even realizing what their passion is because they're always told that they have a role to play. And we're on this podcast, Ordinary Women. We're obviously talking about women. It's no surprise that I'm a feminist, but it's true for everybody. If you're a white straight male who's only seen yourself as CEOs and men in positions of power, it's really difficult to be able to pursue something else. So I think really holding high the urge to do right by myself, to stay true to myself, which came with a lot of, as I previously mentioned, a bit of scandal and tension and a lot of, I'm a people pleaser. I have so much guilt. Amount of money I have spent on therapy working on my guilt. It's not even funny, but it doesn't come easy. And I think for a lot of people watching you from the outside, and especially I think for my family, it's easy to say that, oh, I can detach myself emotionally from my source and the expectations of it, but it's not. But what keeps you going is this desire to stay true to yourself. I think I was talking to some girlfriends about this the other day, is that some of us had to literally physically remove ourselves from our original surroundings. And we have found ourselves on the other side of the world, all because we just wanted to stay true to ourselves and we wanted to live the truest version of ourselves. And I think I love your story, Lucy. I mean, you're living in a country that you didn't grow up in. You've immersed yourself in a whole new culture, and you have experienced and you are experiencing a lot of realities that come with that. But it's true for so many of us, isn't it?
Completely. And I talk about that with my therapist every once in a while, you know, like once she asked, why do you think you move so much, you travel so much? And I was like, I don't want to think about that. But yeah, I think like for a lot of people, it can be hard, especially depending on your family and your surroundings, to be who you truly are if you stay close geographically to people who have different expectations. It's easier to get away. Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people who study psychology or are psychologists or psychiatrists have a lot of insights on it.
Oh, I'm sure. I can't wait to read all the notes that my therapist makes when she's talking to me. But escapism is real, and I don't think it's us
Mm,
running away from our problems. No, but it's, as I said, it's literally us physically removing ourselves from the
yeah.
surroundings that restrict us and that hold us back from being ourselves. So, from this life experience, something that I'm trying to do and I've
Mhm.
started doing is really think about it in from the perspective of coaching. So what I'm doing right now, of course, my day job is a little more commercial, it's a bit more corporate. My title is a sales coach or a sales enablement coach, but it has been a great amalgamation of my work experience so far, which has served me so well. It's helped me achieve that goal of financial independence that I've had for most of my life. And I'm finally starting to feel ready to pivot towards what I think, is sort of the crux of my why, which is enabling others. What I love saying is, I don't have any talent of my own except helping others realize theirs. And I want to polish the skill a bit more. And I think a key to that is helping others see the bigger picture. I think oftentimes we get so caught up in the tactical day to day things, the instant gratification. Where is the next promotion going to come from? Where's your next holiday going to be? Or is the next
Yeah.
person you're going to go on a date with? Is that your life partner? And all of these are good sort of goals to have, but there's always a higher order goal which guides and which should ideally guide things that you do in order to achieve that. I think there's different languages to it. We call it North Star, we call it higher order goals, you may call it your calling. But as long as you can see that, but that requires taking a step back, which I think I can help people do through being a coach. And that's something that I'm pursuing. And that's the value that I really want to bring to everybody else. I think my ideal sort of, if money didn't matter, I'd be somewhere teaching young girls and really empowering them. But as they say, you've got to put your own oxygen mask first. So I'm still breathing through that mask as I try and figure out how do I do all of these things that I want to do.
I love it. Earlier you mentioned Ikigai.
Ikigai.
Ikigai. Almost there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind us what it is, please?
Absolutely. It's definitely not something I came up with. No, it's a Japanese concept, it's a Japanese word. I think it's gotten a lot of attention recently, but I personally first heard of it through someone at work a few years ago. One of our colleagues was quitting this high paying tech job. And in their farewell email, they said, I'm leaving to pursue my Ikigai. And that's the first time I came across the concept and the diagram. So what Ikigai is, and I'm not sure I'm going to do justice to the origins of it, but I'm going to try. And a simple Google gives you a lot of different representations of what this means. But it's really finding the crux of what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. So these, if you look at these as four circles, I think a lot of us are very good at pursuing the overlap in two or even three of these circles. But if you find that overlap or the anchor to all four, that truly is your ikigai. And it's not a destination, it can continue to be a journey for your life. But I love that it also includes what you can be paid for, because at the end of the day, you have to be practical. You have to think about, how are you going to fuel yourself? How are you going to resource yourself to be able to do the thing that you want to do, which you think the world needs? But at the same time, do you love it? Are you actually good at it? I mean, I love to dance, and I don't know, maybe I could get paid for it. I'm not sure, but I don't think I'm good at it. So that's how you filter out your so-called passions and your interests and your hobbies, and try and pursue that ikigai for something more long term. But that's I feel like just like any concept, there is every single person's interpretation of that and what that means for you. And this is what it means for me.
I love it. That's super, super cool. Thank you for sharing and reminding us of this. So, what is your Ikigai?
Ooh, I'm not gonna lie. I think I'm still on the journey of discovering it. I think I get
Mm-hmm.
closer to it every single day. I feel really
Nice.
happy with where I am in life right now in my career. It's taken me a really long time to feel this way. Of course, I didn't just. It's not something that I have felt constantly, and I think there's always ups and downs. I think I read a quote the other day. I can't remember who it was by. Is that if you think your career has had some hindrances, take joy because you're not the only one, or something on those lines. So I think nothing is perfect and nothing is going to give you pure joy or only joy without anything else that comes with it. But I think enabling others to be the truest versions of themselves is something I love doing and I get a lot of energy from. I think I'm good at it, otherwise, people won't be coming to me. I can definitely get paid for it because I think it's a very fascinating industry at the moment. And for good or bad, it's quite unregulated. So it doesn't have any barriers to entry. And I definitely think the world needs it. So enablement is the direction that I'm heading towards. And let's see. I'll keep you posted if that's my Ikigai.
Yeah, I love that.
The pursuit of your, whether you want to call it Ikigai, as I said, or anything else, does require you to be brave.
Yeah.
And I think something that we're often afraid to do in life is make meaningful pivots. The path that you choose when you start out does not have to be the path forever. And I think that's a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of us in this generation, in this world that we live in. And I've been trying to do a lot of reading and thinking about this. And I think it's because when you think about pivot, of course, that means a change. And it often gets confused with quitting or failing at something. I don't know. Have you ever felt that you can't change the course of where you're heading because it may be perceived a certain way?
Yeah, I think I have like a very particular, I don't know how to articulate that, but basically, being French, in like French culture, failing is like the worst thing. And especially when you go study abroad or meet people who are not French and have studied in France, you hear that a lot at school. Like a lot of people don't participate because they're scared of failing, of not having the correct answer, things like that. So I think this idea is particularly, well, I mean, it can be very true in other countries, obviously, but I think it's particularly true in France. And I think it was true for me. Like, for instance, I did a bachelor in economics. At the end of the first year, I knew I hated it, but I still finished it because, yeah, but no, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it's actually quite funny because both my parents have very unusual educational path, which have very much inspired me to be like, okay, you know what, if I don't, if I do something and then I'm like, actually, no, I've had that representation of people who have done that. So yeah, a very like paradoxal, I guess, experience with that. But I think
That's
overall it's very true.
fascinating. I didn't know about that. And Lucy, can I ask? So this it sounds like the culture is not very encouraging of you failing or sort of giving up something. What value do you think it's instilled in you growing up in an environment like that?
Ooh. I mean, definitely perfectionism. Because, yeah, if it's not perfect, if it's not worth it, and like, how everyone says that French people always complain and are never happy, blah, blah, blah. And I do think that for some things it's good. I've seen it especially like protests, France versus UK. For like really big lows, there would be no one in the UK standing up, which I think is like versus in France there would be. And I think that's like really good to, as a people, make sure that you keep your rights and everything. But yeah, equally, I think that, there is also some nuance to that. And the school system definitely doesn't encourage you. It encourages you to follow the rules versus discovering yourself or being who you are, or so it's quite funny because it's really paradoxal.
Wow. I mean, what you mentioned earlier about the protests is obviously really topical, and I'm trying to put that in context with everything that's going in France right now around the retirement age. And of course, we've seen similar instances in the past as well, but I really like the irony you're highlighting here. So you mentioned perfectionism. Now, let me just ask you, how do you think this value has served you in your life thus far?
Probably not.
Really?
I think it's made me very, I mean, okay, so this is also to take in consideration with my, like family and personal history. But I think mostly, I think for something it's been good, like discipline. Like I played the piano, it allowed me to reach a quite good level, for instance. I'm very disciplined in a lot of things I do. But also, I really struggle usually to start something new. That's not true. I always start new things. But not as much as I would like to, I think. Or like a lot of time, I struggle to start something new because it's not going to be perfect, which obviously, when you start something new, you never, like, you won't be perfect. So yeah, I think on some things it's kind of good because, yeah, for like the discipline, the trying harder, trying to do better. And also, like not speak too fast and say like stupid things or like hurting people. I'm always very conscious about that, for instance. But also at the same time,
Which is probably a good thing. Makes you an approachable person. It's not bad.
Probably. But yeah, also I would say that on the, like trying new things, and also being happy with what you have. I tend to not be very satisfied of what I do. But again, that's, to put in perspective with my own history, identity, whatever. Yeah.
So interesting. And I think, I don't know if you caught yourself doing this, but you did mention a few things and ways in which this value of perfectionism is serving you. I think you mentioned discipline, trying to be better, appearing a certain way, and being cordial and making sure you're not hurting other people's feelings, which is just human. And I think everybody should do that. And in the ways that it may not be serving you, from what I'm hearing, is more maybe you want to try new things that you stop yourself from trying because you fear that you may not be great at it. So what is one small thing you're going to try after this, keeping your perfectionism in mind, but not letting you hinder you from doing that thing?
Ooh, okay, I know. So I recently started to paint, and the other day I was struggling on painting one plant that is in my room because I was like, it's not going to be perfect, so it's not worth doing. And so I put it away. Like I just put the background and then I painted the background and then I put it away because I was like, never mind, we're going to do something else with that. So you know what? After this, I'm going to continue, maybe not finish today, but at least continue or like start really this painting.
And you know what? I'm going to reach out to you and make sure that you send me a photo of that completed picture. Art, of all the things, it's so subjective. I mean, if Picasso had thought that his paintings weren't perfect, we wouldn't have all this brilliance in the world today. So yes, I think absolutely. So we've really, I honestly don't know where we started and how we started talking about this. But yes, I think we were talking about pivots and we were talking about the culture of failure and whether it's accepted or not. And I think there's this really sort of, look, I don't want to call it American, but I am going to go forward and call it American because I can't think of any other association with it. But the whole like, I don't quit or I'm not a quitter attitude, like I'm not a fan of that. I actually think it can be quite counterproductive because you end up expending your energy and brain power on something that is actually not serving you. So firstly, knowing that and accepting that you're not a quitter, you're just a smart person who's making informed decisions that are true to you. You must have heard of the phrase, oh, we're building the plane as we fly it. And at least in the corporate world, it often gets used for staying agile, staying nimble. But I think it's so true about life. If you think of life as the plane, you have to build this plane as you're flying it. Imagine just sat there trying to build this perfect thing that you want to live. You're going to miss out on so many things. So not being too pedantic and not being too sort of perfect or, letting your perfectionism come in the way. And I think secondly, even if you do quit and fail, which is going to happen so much. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. I'm sure it's happened to everybody listening. Like, who cares? Who cares? I say this to my younger brother all the time. He's too mature for his age, and I tell him, "Babe, just like go out, make some mistakes, learn from them. Like as long as you don't die, don't kill yourself, like don't end up in jail. Just keep it kosher, keep it within reason. Just make some mistakes and learn from them."
Completely. I was actually talking about. I'm pretty sure I talked about that with someone on this podcast actually, but I'm not too sure. But in French, we have an expression that says you learn to walk by falling, which like is the most basic thing, right? When you learn to walk, you do fall. And I had never given that much thought to that expression, like just an expression. But when I say that to, I think I was, the person I was interviewing, she said, like, can you imagine if as a baby, when you were trying to walk, you fell and you were like, never mind, like walking just not for me. Like that would be hilarious. Obviously you don't do that. So how come as adults we do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just came out of a lecture where we talked about performance wisdom. And I think it is something that you can apply to everything in life and life overall, and not just specific instances, but it's analyzing or sort of just thinking about what went well, what didn't go well, and what did you learn from it. So similar to your French saying, there's also a sort of a short, you want to call it a poem or a saying in Hindi, is I'm not going to be able to translate it in the most poetic way, but what it basically means is, why are we so worried about what's going to happen? If nothing else, you're going to get some experience out of it.
This is so true. This is,
So, I think just being able to make those smart, timely pivots in your life, in your career as humans, competence is one of our 3 key psychological needs. We often talk about humans' physical needs, but there's also psychological needs that drive us. And those are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And if you're not getting these from what you're doing at the moment, it is okay to take a step back, look at that bigger picture, look at your higher order goal, and really think about making that pivot. It doesn't have to be a sharp 180 degree. It can almost be like, it doesn't have to be a fight it, what's the movie, Fast and Furious crazy U-turn. It's almost like a tack when you're sailing. Like you've really got to think about it. You want to head in the direction of the wind, or make the boat, of course, go and sail in a way that the wind supports you. Oh my God, I'm like totally butchering this analogy, but I think you know what I'm getting at. But making a tack is a lot slower and a mindful and a thoughtful process than just making a sharp pivot without thinking about it. So that's something that I think doesn't get encouraged enough in the culture that we live in, just generally in the corporate and the capitalist culture. But I think it's super, super important, and it's okay to change your careers and make decisions in life that you think may be perceived a certain way, but as long as it feels right for you.
Completely. Such wise words. I love that. I think we'll have to conclude soon. But I want before we conclude this episode, I want to know, why are you proud of yourself or these findings? Yeah, in regards to what we talked about today, I guess.
Okay. So to conclude and to answer your question, I think what I'm going to do is quote somebody else, because it really does justice to how I feel. And I remember crying when I read this quote in the book. It's from Glennon Doyle. She's had a very colorful life as an individual, and she really has done a beautiful job of, putting it down on paper. And this is from her book, Untamed. And I'm proud of myself because I do think that I have been following this. So the quote goes, "Every time you're given a choice between disappointing someone else and disappointing yourself, it is your duty to disappoint that someone else. Your job throughout your entire life is to disappoint as many people as it takes to avoid disappointing yourself."
I love this. Thank you so much, and thank you for everything you said and sharing bits of your story and of your thinking and experience. I've enjoyed this discussion so much. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.
It was really, really nice to speak with you.
Of course. And don't forget to send me a photo of that painting. Not going to leave
Yes,
you.
I will. Maybe like end of the week. I will. I promise I will.
Take your time. Your path, your journey.
And there is a tradition in this podcast that the guest always gets the very last word, so the mic is yours.
I'm going to say, follow your own path, not of the one next to you.